Let's bring in a small business expert, Gene Marks, CPA, president of the Marks Group. So, of course, listening to Secretary Yellen, this may not happen. We could turn a corner here. So it's not the time to panic. It's time to plan, Gene. So now listen, we've all heard get rid of or knock down your credit card debt. It's usually one of the first steps. So what if you don't have enough or a lot of extra income, Gene, to double up and triple down on credit card payments? What can you do?
Sure, Orthel, it's a great question. You should be reducing your credit card debt if you can. If you don't have the income to just pay it off, which is certainly understandable, then consider refinancing it, maybe with a home equity loan if you've got equity in your house. All of your debt should be refinanced to something longer term with fixed interest rates. It might be a little bit more now, but longer term, it'll hedge you against rising prices and potential inflation.
Sounds good. Now, you mentioned home. The other thing we always hear, if you don't have a home, you hold off on buying one and financing other big ticket items. Is there anything else, Gene, that we should stop doing or adjust over the next 12 months to shore up our financial foundation? You know, things that we're already doing that are not obvious money guzzlers, but expenses that add up.
Yeah, I mean, it's common sense. I mean, and if you're looking ahead, and if you do believe that a recession is on its way, Arthel, which I do believe it is on its way, you want to start looking at your expenses right now. What recurring expenses do you have coming through that you might want to cut back on? And how often are you eating out where you could be making stuff at home or using services that might be more expensive if you just do it yourself? Even employing outside people like landscapers or people to cut your lawn, but maybe you can do that yourself as well. Every dollar counts when there's a downturn, particularly if you might have a risk of employment. You want to make sure you build up some savings to try and make sure you offset any of those things that could impact you in a recession.
And of course, understanding that all portfolios are different. If you're planning to retire, say in the next 12 months, what's the best way to keep your 401k or other interest bearing investments from shrinking?
Well, the first thing you don't want to do, which you said earlier about the recession, is you don't want to panic. Stock market has fallen like 20% in the past year, so that is a lot, but markets tend to rise and fall. So don't panic and don't panic sell. Stay the course because stock markets usually tend to rise faster than other investments that you might want to make. Having said so, talk to a wealth manager or your investment advisor, and you might want to shift some of the assets that you have, Arthel. For example, in recessionary times, utilities are a good stock to own, or real estate, or healthcare, or consumer staples like food and other core products. Those are good stocks to have in your portfolio to kind of weather things out for the recession. The best bet, though, is to have a good blue chip mutual fund that's invested in some larger companies and that's handled by a good experienced investment manager.
What about bonds? Any particular bonds that might be
So
safe at this point or safer?
there's two bonds that I can recommend. One is called TIPS, which are Treasury Inflation Protected Securities. Again, you can ask your wealth manager about that, but if you buy one of those bonds, they're adjusted for inflation. So as inflation goes up, the interest rate on them goes up as well. The other one is something called I bonds, which is a sort of a U.S. savings bond that you can buy. There's a limit to the amount that you can purchase, like 10,000 annually, but they are also protected against inflation as well. So ask about TIPS, Treasury Inflation Protected Securities, and ask about I bonds. At least that way you can put your savings away. It's not going to grow significantly, but it's a good hedge against inflation. You certainly won't be losing money.
Gene Marks, you always just give it to us straight and how we can all understand it. I really appreciate that. I always look forward to our segments. Gene
Me
Marks,
too,
thank you so
Arthel.
much. Oh, good. And I'll see you again. Thank you. Take
We'll see you
care.
again soon. Take care.